Good evening. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Corey Thompson here in the TV9 Weather Lab with an update and some coverage of severe thunderstorms that are moving into parts of eastern Iowa. We've had a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings and a severe thunderstorm watch for parts of the area. And so we're going to track them through eastern Iowa with you and provide updates here on this live stream as needed. Now, at this point, there have been no particular reports of severe weather outcomes in terms of either some really strong winds or any damage. There was one report earlier up in Howard County, I believe, or perhaps it was even a little bit farther west of that, of some quarter-sized hail. Some stronger wind gusts have been observed in central Iowa with some storms moving through there, but even those have been mostly below severe limits. But the potential is there for a few storms to produce a little bit of those stronger winds. So let's take a look at pinpoint Doppler radar. These storms are primarily north of Highway 20 at this point in this side of the state. West of it, they're starting to cross south of that line. It's the couple of severe thunderstorm warnings in northeast Iowa that we are most concerned about at this hour, with the possibility of some severe weather taking place. We've got two warnings. The first one that's about to expire in 10 minutes is for portions of Chickasaw, Fayette, Howard, and Winneshiek counties. That goes until the hour of 7:15. 60-mile-per-hour winds are likely there, and 0.75-inch hail, which is also known as penny-sized hail, which is actually just below severe limits. So that is not the main concern. The main concern this evening with any storm that turns severe will be those gusty winds. And another warning for the same storm just downstream to the east. This goes until about 7:45 for the possibility of 60-mile-per-hour winds as well. Includes communities such as West Union and Fayette. Olwine not within this warning, and does not include Decorah either. Folks in central Winneshiek County have been kind of dodging around the heaviest of the storms, and at this point the strongest part of this storm is crossing into very southern Winneshiek County and northwestern Fayette County. So let's go ahead and pause what we've got going on here and show you some of the insights that we have about this storm. Winds are, again, potentially a little bit gusty, and the storm not moving all that quick, about 35 miles per hour. So it is going to take its time. But the strongest part of the storm, again, that sort of area that looks a little bit curved, a little bit like a backward C as it moves off to the southeast. Richfield, the storm is just about there. Folks in Austin, it would be close to about 7:15. West Union closer to 7:19. Castalia at about 7:24. Claremont at 7:30. Fayette at 7:37. Highland closer to 7:40. And then we start to get out of this warning, like Monona at 7:49, Arlington at 7:55, and Elkader closer to 7:56. So if this storm maintains its strength and the National Weather Service sees fit, those areas would likely be included in a severe thunderstorm warning somewhere down the line. So that's tracking off to the southeast. Now, in terms of this storm's overall threats, again, wind is the main concern. The National Weather Service does include in this warning, perhaps you notice right there, those words that say tornado possible. They are discerning a little bit of rotation in the storm. At this point, I don't see a ton of it that would be especially concerning, especially given the orientation of the storm and the way that it's structured and the way that it's moving. But sometimes you never say never, and things, they're of course keeping a close eye on that. Let's take a look actually at velocity real quick just to get a picture of things, and you can see at this point the storm is kind of crossing parallel to the radar beam. So the radar is located to the upper right of your screen, and so it's shooting its beam down this direction. Now, radar can only detect winds that are moving along that beam. So the red is winds that are moving away from the radar site, and green is winds that are moving toward the radar site. So we're in kind of a spot where it may not fully pick up the strongest winds within the storm from this perspective. So it doesn't look overly impressive in terms of those speeds on that scale. It doesn't get to the high end in any way, but that potential is there for some of those gustier winds. We have had some reports of winds that are close to that up in Howard County, 45 to 55 miles per hour estimated by emergency managers up there. Some very heavy rainfall. St. Ansgar, they've received a spotter up there, according to the National Weather Service, almost 4 inches of rain reportedly in the last hour. And so that is a lot of rain to be receiving over any stretch of time. But certainly within an hour, that is pretty exceptional, which is why parts of that area are actually included in this flash flood warning. That includes Cresco and areas along Highway 9 in Howard County. No shock there. These storms clearly have had plenty of precipitation with them. In fact, let's go ahead and put on the radar estimates for the last 3 hours. It's going to take a second for this to pop up, but we will look and see what the radar believes has fallen. If you're joining us on our kcrg.com live stream, thank you. For the folks on YouTube, thank you as well. If you would like to interact and ask questions directly, you can do that through our YouTube channel, at KCRG on YouTube. And you can ask questions in the live chat there. We'll try to address them. Sometimes things get a little busy, and we may not be able to fully answer every question out there, but we would certainly like to do as many as we can. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. Rainfall estimates in this area. Very heavy and really consistent with some of those readings that we've seen from rain gauges up in that area. 3, 4, 5 inches possible in far northern Howard County. Now, as we pan farther south, you can see those numbers have gotten a little bit lower. Now, these storms are still moving through, but they are starting to move a little bit more off to the southeast, and that is leaving things not quite as wet. But even then, you're talking about the potential for ½ inch to an inch in a really quick amount of time. And so that's why the concern for flash flooding is there. In terms of the overall perspective for the rest of the night, let's take a look at Pinpoint Futurecast in terms of what we can expect for the next few hours. Storms tracking off to the southeast, continuing those sort of clusters or broken lines by 11 o'clock, starting to move closer to the Cedar Rapids, Dubuque area, and then tracking southeastward from there. Approaching the Mississippi River about midnight, 1 o'clock. Some scattered storms are possible into the night, so we may not be fully done with this as we get through the evening, but generally a weakening trend, especially from midnight onward. It does look like this will just be a period of time here for a handful of hours, and then likely we'll see less and less trouble, which is good news. Pinpoint Doppler radar shows those storms tracking off to the southeast. Generally, a couple of different line segments, one in central Iowa, one in north central Iowa, stretching between Mason City and Decorah. Both have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings, neither especially well organized at this point, but something that we're tracking very, very closely. All right, Mark in the YouTube chat asks, big hail producer? No, not so much, which is good news. The environment today, not necessarily super conducive to seeing a large amount of hail out of these storms. I wouldn't be surprised if a little bit of hail is taking place. We'll put on our hail path here. You can see, though, as we go over the last hour or so, there were indications up in Mitchell and Howard counties that there was a pretty good amount of hail up there. And we did have that one report. If I go ahead and add those storm reports, you can see there were a couple of reports up near the Iowa-Minnesota border of some heavy rain as well as some hail. So at this point, no, not as much of a concern. You see at the end of this loop, we're talking pea to marble-sized hail potentially, which certainly isn't pleasant to stand out in if that's where you're located, but certainly also does not cause a lot of damage. But watching this radar in motion, fortunately, things are starting to move a little bit. Initially, they were just kind of hanging out a little bit along where those storms were developing, but now that they're moving forward a little bit, hopefully that can reduce some of the heavier rain threats and that would be an excellent piece of information. And then things moving to the southeast from there. Mark says he's in Arlington. Yeah, you'll probably run into some of these storms in a little bit, so that is something to watch out for as well. The warnings for the storms in central Iowa. That is an interesting thing to check out. There were a couple of warnings out here, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one is expiring, the one between Carroll and Fort Dodge at 7:15. And the other one in western Iowa near the Missouri River is expiring at 7:15. And so far, no intention for those to be extended at this point. The atmosphere, the environment that we have today is not extremely conducive to severe weather. The ingredients that we look for in severe storms are a handful of things. And in terms of where we stand with those, they're somewhat limited, which is not a bad thing. We certainly do like to see conditions staying a little more, reluctant to produce severe weather. The ingredients list here, if you're making a recipe for a severe thunderstorm, moisture, instability, lift, and wind shear. That's the stuff that we have in place today. Moisture, of course, speaks for itself. Moisture both here at the ground, it's felt pretty muggy. Dew points up in northern Iowa are in the 70s. Instability is the energy that storms have to work with based on sort of the structure of the temperatures in the atmosphere. There is a decent amount of that, plenty hot, of course, and humid, and things are at least somewhat favorable that way. Lift is the upward motion of the atmosphere that causes storms to develop. Obviously, we've got that because storms did develop and they continue to kind of maintain their strength. But wind shear, that's the one that we're lacking today, and that's kind of a critical one. Those numbers are pretty low, and so that is going to overall limit our severe weather threat today. It's part of the reason why we here in the Weather Lab decided to not call this a first alert day because of that sort of lacking factor there, and it's kind of a significant one. It's not that you can't get severe weather with low wind shear, but it certainly helps, especially when you're talking about lines of storms. You need that to help organize those storms. And so today, it's just not there in the amounts that you would expect if you'd have a really robust severe weather threat. So here's our single warning at this point. The warning for portions of Chickasaw, Howard, and Winneshiek and northwestern Fayette counties has expired. So the sole warning that we have in place right now is this one for Fayette and Winneshiek. It goes until 7:45, 60-mile-per-hour winds there. By all indications, this storm has weakened a little bit based on some of the tools that we have to sort of measure its strength. It does show that we've seen some signs of that. Which is good news in terms of its ability to produce severe weather. So that is a positive sign. We will always take that. Looking for new information from the National Weather Service, not seeing much. Let's take a look at some of our city cams, though, as these storms approach some of our communities in northeast Iowa. Right in the path of this in Sumner. A YouTube comment. That is true. Many folks, especially north of Highway 20, will get thunderstorms this evening. How severe they'll be is pretty much the open question here. And so that's what we're watching. That's why we're tracking them so closely. All right, let's take that city cam tour. First of all, view from Fayette, who is in the severe thunderstorm warning. Storms are still a little distance away, but they're approaching very, very soon. We'll put a storm track on these storms again here in a second to give you an updated look at what we're expecting there. Decorah, an area that's seen thunderstorm activity in the neighborhood, and it is certainly raining up at that direction, not included in a severe thunderstorm warning at this time. It hasn't been all night, in fact, but some moderate rainfall, probably some lightning in the area, so certainly want to stay indoors in the Decorah area. Waverly, we are looking off to the northeast here from the Wartburg campus. You can see the water tower off in the distance, and ominous looking clouds, but nothing at this point at least imminently dangerous in Waverly. The severe thunderstorm warning area is going to pass to your northeast, but thunderstorms are still moving toward Waverly here in just a little while. Plenty of heavy rain moving toward that direction. Parkersburg, similar story in Butler County. You can maybe see a little bit of a hint of the edge of the storm here, perhaps, that sort of brightening in the clouds. That might be the leading edge of that. Our brand new city cam in Olwine may end up having the best look here. Let's go ahead and take off those observations on the screen. Yeah, you can see the storm rolling in, of course. Olwine not included in the severe thunderstorm warning, but it is an area that will likely see thunderstorms, the strongest of which, though, may pass just to your northeast in terms of the ones that the National Weather Service is concerned about to be able to produce strong to severe winds, potentially. But the good news is that we don't really see things, at least imminently, changing too much either in terms of the intensity of these storms. No sign that they're ramping up in any way, perhaps some sign that they've decreased in intensity a little bit, but it is still relatively early. And you can see portions of the radar, especially southeast of the Mason City area. There's a pretty heavy storms there, and as these storms continue to sort of develop and congeal into a line, this is when you could see some gustier wind develop potentially. That's just kind of the dynamics of the situation today, is that if that occurs, you may end up seeing those storms continuing to organize. So that's kind of the thought for the evening, is that as this line progresses southeastward, you may see additional warnings along it if those gusts are able to sort of organize and materialize. But they may not last for very long, which is good news. It does not look like an extensive, severe weather situation here. Something you can kind of pick out on these storms here in central Iowa. This storm did have a severe thunderstorm warning earlier. But I want to pause the radar, start here. Let's start right about here, so 6:34. this is where the leading edge of the storm was. As we go forward, you can see the wind rushing out from the storm. It's actually this thin green line you see here that's well out ahead of it. That's the leading edge of the wind. That's the outflow boundary, it's called. And so some of the cool air in the wind is flowing outward. And so instead of being lined up right with where the heaviest rain is, it's several miles out ahead of it at this point. Let's actually see, using our little distance tool, it's already rushed out about 8, 9, 10 miles out in front of it. And so it's not a sign necessarily that the storm is weak, but it is weakening, and that's not the type of signature you'd see on radar in a storm that is going to stay significant. National Weather Service updated their warning here. It goes until 7:45. 60-mile-per-hour winds are the threat with this storm still for another 20 minutes at most as it tracks off to the southeast. However, the National Weather Service notes that they've seen some weakening in the storm, and we've been observing that too. The threat, at least when they had that tornado possible tag on there, is gone, which is good news. Still tracking to the southeast at, let me check the latest speed that they saw it at. It's 25 miles per hour again. So we'll pause things here and put this at about that. Yeah, I can live with that. Okay, so West Union in about 2 minutes from now. You're probably already starting to see some of the heavier rain. Fayette at about 7:40. Olwine closer to 8:03. And remember, not all these areas will necessarily see severe weather outcomes, but as the storm continues off to the southeast, it would approach Strawberry Point at its current rate of speed at about 8:14. Guttenberg closer to 8:29. Cassville in southwest Wisconsin, 8:42. Holy Cross at 8:53. Dyersville in Dubuque County at 9:02, and Dickeyville, again in southwest Wisconsin, that we'd be talking about 9:16. So that's where we're at this point in terms of that storm's progress. Let's put on our lightning tracker. It's going to take a second for that data to load up. If that is the extent of the lightning in this storm for real, that is a good sign that this storm is not overly intense. In fact, the brightest and most frequent lightning is off to the west toward Mason City, where the observation from the National Weather Service there, emergency managers, Floyd County near Nora Springs, there was a report of some flash flooding. Mason City, water and roadways, cars stranded. Would suppose that the National Weather Service will probably issue a flash flood warning up there shortly. Question in the YouTube chat, any tornado potential with this? Little to none. The risk is pretty low as we go through the evening. The environment's just not really conducive to it this evening. Let's pull up the latest severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center and take a look at some of those threats. There's your severe weather threats individually from the Storm Prediction Center. And so really the only one that actually qualifies for the slight risk area we've been talking about is the damaging wind risk. The tornado threat, this yellow area is the lowest end tornado threat that the Storm Prediction Center issues an outlook for. Actually represents a 2% risk of a tornado developing. So it is pretty low, pretty slim, and it's not getting any higher. Same story about our large hail threat, which is back here. Again, we haven't seen many reports of it, a couple up in far northern Iowa, but that does look like a secondary threat too. Instead, it really is this damaging wind risk, and if damaging winds were to occur, so far we do not have any reports of that. It would likely be in that 60 to 70 mile per hour range at most, and probably more toward the 50 to 60 mile per hour range generally. So it is a relatively isolated situation. There was a new flash flood warning. We talked about that report out of Floyd County. So this includes all of Floyd County, Charles City included. This goes until 10:30 this evening. Southern Mitchell County, which is outside the TV9 viewing area as well, included in this, as some pretty heavy rainfall tracks through. If we put this in motion, you see all of that rain that's falling and more rain to come. At this point, the National Weather Service believes 2 to 4 inches of rain has fallen sort of in a general overview of that flash flood warning area, and you could see at least another couple of inches. And so far, we've got that report from Charles City of, no, rather Nora Springs, of some trouble. And it does look like it's outside the TV9 viewing area, but over toward Mason City, the National Weather Service did issue that flash flood warning, as we kind of expected. Yeah, definitely some heavier downpours. Could be some small hail in portions of Floyd County too. Would not be shocked by that. In terms of severe thunderstorm warnings, just this one for Fayette County. Last news from the National Weather Service suggested that they believe the storm is weakening a little bit, and I would agree with that. Exactly what we just said about the flash flood warning in Floyd County. Just plenty of heavy rain already, and more to come for at least the next hour or so as things track slowly off to the southeast. So that is going to be a concern as we go into the night. See that second line, a bit of a gap between these two lines. Be interesting to see if we get anything that sort of fills in that gap. Otherwise, we may end up with a gap in terms of who gets the rain as we go through the night. So something to watch out for there. You can also see some of these storms in northeast Iowa. They're moving, this line segment is moving generally southeastward. And then we've got some storms over here that are moving a bit more southerly. And so they are kind of emanating outward from the middle there with this new development back here on the west side. That's what's causing some of those flash flooding concerns as new development moves over the same spots. But at this point, luckily, it's been pretty limited. Severe thunderstorm watch for the counties in pink goes until 10 o'clock. I believe we are talking about some of these western counties that goes until midnight. So that is the story there. New update from the National Weather Service. You'll be able to see it here on your screen. No severe thunderstorm warning anymore for portions of Winnebago and Fayette counties. That has been canceled. That's based on latest information from them. They believe that the storm has weakened enough below severe limits that they were able to cancel that warning about 15 minutes early. So that is a very good sign. We are starting to see perhaps a little more development on this side of the line. And if that congeals and organizes a bit much more, that could lead to more development here as we go farther to the south and southeast. At this point, it's still pretty loosely organized, but something to watch out for. If those storms are able to further organize, that could lead to an increased risk for some damaging winds. Let's take a look at our Oline City cam again. Starting to see those storms move in slowly but surely, kind of make out the leading edge of that storm. Here's the area right here in terms of where we're looking probably some of those gustier winds are approaching as this portion of the cloud moves over. It's that gust front that's passing southeastward. So even if it's not severe, gusty winds would be likely with that development, and that could certainly, you'll notice it, kick up some dust perhaps, and any rain that may be falling would certainly be wind blown in those areas. That is the view. Let's go back to pinpoint Doppler radar. No severe thunderstorm warnings anywhere in the state. Some indication that we'll keep these storms going, but in terms of severe weather threat, hopefully we can keep it limited. But of course, we'll be monitoring it here and providing you with all the updates. But due to the fact there are no severe thunderstorm warnings left at this point, and that the storms are continuing to move through the area, we're going to leave you for now from anchored coverage. We're going to keep the stream going in terms of providing some of those radar views, city cam views, all the information that you need to know. If conditions warrant, new warnings are issued, we'll jump in and provide more information. But for now, we're going to leave it at that, and thank you for joining us. And don't go anywhere. Of course, we've got all that information that's going to be coming here very, very shortly, and we'll be back again with more information as needed. Stay with us, and thank you. Brad was correct. No sound because my microphone was turned off. Okay, folks, welcome. We are just taking a quick summary of what's going on here around eastern Iowa. So that severe weather threat is still present for the areas you see highlighted here. The orange area is where the slight risk for severe weather exists, and storms will really outrun their best ingredients the farther southeast they go in terms of being able to produce any sort of severe weather there. So that's good news. Pinpoint Doppler radar shows the activity as it's tracking through. Here it is in still frame. We'll put it in motion. Still lots of heavy rain, in many cases a decent amount of lightning. Let's put lightning tracker on and see what we see there. Yeah, a fair amount of lightning. Some has picked up in especially north central Iowa, south of Mason City. It's where some of the heaviest rainfall is being observed right now as well. So we'll go ahead and pinpoint these storms as they're tracking to the southeast. See that flash flood warning continues for Floyd and Mitchell counties until 10:30 tonight, based on some reports and some very heavy rainfall based on radar estimates. Some pretty heavy rainfall falling in the Waterloo Cedar Falls area at the moment, Olwine down toward that area as this cluster of storms moves through. We're gonna have to watch these storms out here. They're some of the strongest that we have in place right now, and that could be where we could see maybe a little bit of gusty wind, but at this point, even those don't look especially ominous. The earlier line of storms that had a severe thunderstorm warning with it is really weakened, and we see some rain and embedded lightning in far northeast Iowa. For the most part, areas south of Highway 20 have been dry, at least east of Interstate 35. We're starting to see these storms in central Iowa moving through, very loosely organized west of Des Moines on Interstate 80. Some new development there just west of Marshalltown, right along Highway 30 between Marshalltown and Ames. That is some of the most recent activity, but in terms of overall coverage, in terms of severe weather threat, we really haven't seen that change very recently. Again, the heaviest storm is the one that is up in Franklin County right now. So something to watch. Could be a storm that could produce some at least very heavy rain, if not the potential for a little bit of gusty wind, maybe even a little bit of hail. Can't fully rule that out. I'm going to put on the nearest view here. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly got that heavy rain going for it. Let's put on our hail tracker here. Yeah, radar's detecting a little bit of hail there. Could be up to quarter-sized in diameter. Or, yeah, so about that. It's pretty limited in terms of its overall extent, but areas southwest of Hampton could be seeing a little bit of hail moving through. Reeve, you may hear some of that. At this point, again, pretty limited in terms of its overall expectation, but you can see it's up to that quarter-size color on the scale on your right, and so that's something to watch out for too. Overall, though, we are watching these storms track through and stay relatively weak, and that's the good news. We're going to put on our infrared satellite view. This kind of gives us a view of the clouds at night. And the brighter oranges and reds represent colder cloud tops, and so those are the stronger storms. They extend higher into the atmosphere. And so you can see if we put on the last, let's say 5 hours, it's going to take a little bit to load up here. Give it some time. You can see there's those little areas of red embedded within it. Earlier this afternoon, as storms developed, there was some focus with that line that was moving toward this portion of the state, but then it really sort of refocused back here into central Iowa, south of Mason City. So that's where some of the stronger storms are at this point. You can see some of those colder cloud tops in central Iowa here really faded, some developing south of Sioux City, north of the Omaha Council Bluffs area. But in terms of the heaviest storms, that would be indicated right here south of Mason City. Some of the heavier stuff there. But again, nothing really ominous here using this picture either. So that's the good news. The flash flood warning that was in effect for Howard and Mitchell counties, that's been canceled from the National Weather Service. We still have this one for Floyd and Mitchell counties until 10:30. And again, the heaviest storms right now south of Hampton in this area, as well as near the Waterloo Cedar Falls area. Let's go ahead and put on a storm track. Actually, I want to check out the Waterloo Cedar Falls City Cam. So let's do that instead. Yeah, I got to tell you, I would have expected more rain visible on this. At this point, it's not that ominous looking. Let's pan around a little bit. You can see the trees in the foreground just to the right of the Campanile blowing, but nothing extreme. Are we just a little too far west? That might be the case here. That some of the heavier rain is moving through Waterloo, but not Cedar Falls. There still is some rain falling, though. There we go, folks. Sorry. That might have been a little disorienting, moving all that stuff around, but I just wanted to get a look and make sure we weren't missing anything interesting there. So in terms of the heaviest activity, again, starting to focus farther southeast. We'll pinpoint here in the Waterloo Cedar Falls area. And yeah, you can tell that the heaviest rain is falling more toward Waterloo than it is toward over by the Unidome, for example, that you can see on the screen there. So between Raymond and Hudson, Cedar Falls area seeing some rain, but not the heaviest heavy downpours. So that's an interesting sight there. Let's see if we can pull up one of our DOT cameras. See what we got. This is from the water tower in Evansdale. So you can see it's coming down pretty good there in terms of the heaviest rainfall. Some good gusty winds too as these storms move through. You know, just at first look, not necessarily something that would scream severe weather, but certainly some strong winds, and that's going to be some pretty blinding rain as well. So you would want to be careful if you were in those areas. Bear with me as I pull up another. In that area. Let's do Evansdale Drive. So this gets us closer to the ground, and you can kind of get a different idea there of just how heavy that rain is falling across that area. Again, blinding rain, kind of the concern as these storms move through because of all that moisture that we have in the air. Plenty to fall and to cause headaches for folks driving through the area. Certainly want to slow down if you got time, pull over to off an exit or somewhere safe. Don't pull over under an overpass, but somewhere safe that you can kind of stand by and wait for storms to pass and have them move through. So that's a view from there. One more look here at pinpoint Doppler radar before we kind of send you back to a little of the automated loop of information here. Let's figure out how fast these storms are moving. Oh, probably about 25 to 30 miles per hour. Let's be generous and make it 30. So as these continue their slow southeastward track, assuming they maintain their strength and motion, that would get you closer to Elkader, well, not right now, LaPorte City, just right around another 10, 15 minutes. Manchester at about 9:12, Vinton at about 9:28, Dyersville closer to 9:38, and then you get down to Cedar Rapids area about 10 to 10:30 in terms of some of the first storms coming through. There is a little bit of isolated development taking place out ahead of it, so you could see a little rain before then, but in terms of the heaviest stuff there. Ashley, I don't know if you're still in the YouTube channel, excuse me for not catching your question faster, but how about Delaware County? So there you go, there's a look at it right there. In terms of what to expect, Manchester puts you in that range at about half an hour from now. No severe weather with these storms as they're approaching, but heavy rainfall and lightning. Another question, what will Linn County weather look like for tonight? There are storms approaching. They will likely be below severe limits as it appears right now, but can't rule out some heavy downpours, certainly some gusty winds, and some frequent lightning. Could be a half an inch to an inch of rain at least as these move through. And really the question is, how much of this activity that's behind that kind of leading edge, how much of this tracks over the same area? And so if it ends up orienting more this way, kind of parallel there, we could end up with some very heavy rainfall totals. Bear with me, I'm going to look up something. In terms of some of the heavier rainfall. So this is actually rain in the last hour. And let's see what's been going on up in northeast Iowa. Remember that area near Charles City has a flash flood warning, perhaps for good reason. Some of this could be contaminated by hail, but anywhere you see the yellow, that's an inch or more. Anywhere you see that darker green, that's about a half an inch or more. And so we are seeing some areas that are getting 2-ish, maybe 3-ish inches of rain in an hour. So that is pretty hefty rainfall. And so that would cause some problems, especially in urban areas, would cause pretty quick rises on streams. Something to watch out for there. And you can see within the last hour, adding up, and even some of these areas out on the leading edge, we're talking inch to inch and a half in an hour, or even less, because those storms have just approached within the last 10 to 30 minutes, perhaps. Ashley asks, how about Colesburg? Similar kind of story. Storms will be approaching and moving through pretty soon. And so let's put a storm track. Again, look how scattered they are. Can't get Colesburg to show up on our storm track exactly, but you'd be talking closer to that time frame around Greeley, perhaps, kind of a similar time frame. And so that would be about 9-10, some of those heavy downpours and lightning. But severe weather, especially on this part of the line, doesn't look especially likely. We're still talking about the portion back toward the west that's going to miss. Question, most of Iowa safe to sleep then? I would say so. If you've got a weather radio in your house, not a bad idea to have it on so you can hear just in case warnings are issued. But at this point, the severe weather threat is relatively low. If you live in a flood-prone area, do be conscious of the potential for flash flooding. That is one of the things that we're concerned about tonight. There is a flood watch in effect for parts of the area. Goes until at least midnight tonight, if not a little bit later. Does not include everyone, but the area is in green. And even if you live outside of this area, farther southeast, we can't rule out some isolated flash flooding there too. So that is one of the concerns tonight, as we've generally kept things less severe, but we're not out of the woods yet. Still think that there's a possibility we could see a couple of warnings issued. But until that time, we're going to go ahead and send you back to the loop of weather information. That'll keep you company. We're going to drop anchored coverage for at least a little bit, but for the time being, stick with us. And when conditions warrant, we'll be back here with more information. So thanks for joining us. Good evening. We are going to go ahead and end the stream for the evening as the severe weather threat really has diminished quite a bit. Severe thunderstorm watch still continues for a couple of counties in our northwest zone. Would not be shocked if those get dropped very, very soon. Only goes until midnight, in fact. And you see it's just from Bremer County on westward. The other counties in northeast Iowa, when that watch was until 10 o'clock initially, they have since been canceled. Obviously, they would have expired very, very soon anyway. But due to the threat of severe weather diminishing as the storms push through and just the atmosphere not being as conducive to severe weather, that is the case. Here is pinpoint Doppler radar. You can see since we last spoke, the middle part of this blob of storms now has really filled in with new storm development. So there's lots of lightning, lots of heavy rain, and some of the heaviest rain could be falling, especially in this area that is kind of lining up a little bit. So you could see some heavier totals stretching from south of Mason City down toward the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area. Waterloo, Cedar Falls could be seeing quite a bit of rain in the very near future. So we may see additional flash flood concerns. The Storm Prediction Center actually has highlighted a small part of eastern Iowa, kind of in that same zone as the spot where new development of storms could occur. And that's when you may get an isolated severe storm yet as those storms kind of develop, and that's about it. They could produce a little bit of hail or maybe a bit of gusty wind. The tornado threat essentially is zero at this point. So that is where we stand. Because of that, we're going to go ahead and end the stream for the night. But we do thank you for joining us throughout the evening. Hopefully we were informative. And of course, we will continue to provide updates on KCRG.com, the KCRG First Alert Weather app. We're on at 10 o'clock on KCRG TV9 tonight, as always, and we'll have the latest as conditions warrant. But thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good night and stay safe.